stuff.
You're listening to The Scott Radley Show, weeknights from 7 to 9 on AM900 CHML.
So I'm reading a story online today, and I got to tell you, I was just completely taken with the idea of this because I thought this was such a cool thing. Now, I am not an old car guy. I am so unhandy that the idea of me finding an old car and fixing it up and fiddling around under the hood and doing all that kind of stuff, just not a possibility at all. But we have a guy just around the street from where we live who actually, when they built their house, built a third garage onto the front of the house. And when you drive by, all through the summer, he's got the garage door up and he's tinkering on his car. And I swear, he takes the thing apart just to put it back together over and over again. That car is apart and together more times, but he loves it. And a lot of people do. But what happens when you find an old car, you fix it up, you put all that money and that time and that love into it, and you then realize when you're about to take it out for a drive on the road or show it somewhere that there is one piece missing that doesn't fit in. You've got a 1952 whatever that you've put together, and suddenly you've got a modern license plate that doesn't fit at all. Sounds like a small piece. Go look at some old cars and put a modern license plate on it. It doesn't work. License plates over the years have changed a ton, which, again, never dawned on me until you actually see some cars with the new license plates on it that look not so good. Well, Eric Vetterati owns yomplates.ca. That's his website. He finds old license plate, restores them, gets them in shape to be put on vintage cars, and then makes them legal. He joins me now. Eric, thanks for doing this tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on.
I got to tell you, until I read this story today, I had no idea this was a thing. I didn't know what you did even existed.
No, it's interesting because the ministry doesn't do a good job in advertising the program at all, actually. And it's a law that's been around since the year 2000, and they have one lonely page on their website that talks about it, but you have to go digging to find it. And essentially, I restore the plates so that people can put on a same year plate on their vehicle, so long as it's before 1973. After that point, the plates were no longer stamped with years on them.
And this is completely legal. If I find a plate from whatever year and I can put them on my car and they're roadworthy, I can drive with them.
There's a few caveats, but all things being equal, yes. Essentially what happens is there's two kind of major points that have to be taken into consideration if you're going to do that. One is that you have to find a old license plate pair that has an available number in the ministry system. The problem is we've been using the same system since 1980, and the province has not done what they call a refresh in the system. So what ends up happening is they've pretty well exhausted all of the combinations out there that you can imagine. So it just so happens that old plates have similar combinations that match existing entries in the database. So that's step one, is trying to find a clear number. And then step two is the ministry will only allow legible plates on the road. So what you have to do is either find a very nice original condition pair, which is tough to do the older you get, or have them refinished. And this is the only program actually in the province of Ontario that lets you actually submit a restored pair. You're not allowed touching up other plates that are currently in use. So,
and as you said, unlike our friends to the south who get the benefit of only needing a rear license plate, we have to actually find two of them.
That's exactly it. 99% of the years in our history had matching pairs, so you do need to find a matching pair. There's only a few years in the World War II era where we only had one rear plate because of the metal shortage. But all that being said, 9 times out of 10, you're going to need the pair.
Okay, so I have a. Tell me, what would be a really common year, a common car? Maybe not even common. Something special that somebody might want to come to you and get. Like 1960, what?
Definitely 1969 is, I'd say, my most requested year. Reason being is that's the muscle car era. Everybody wants a pair for their muscle car, and 1969 because it's a dark blue background. Back then, plates on the odd years, so the 67, 69, 71, for instance, they were blue backgrounds. So
really?
They really
Okay.
so they really stand out on the road as opposed to the white backgrounds, which were the even years. So guys really want something that stands out, and those blue backgrounds do. And
Okay,
then,
so I'm not a car guy, as I said. So
Right.
what would be a 1969 car that would be at the top of the heap that guys would really want? What am I looking for here?
probably a Mustang.
Okay, so I've got a 69 Mustang, and I go on your website. I call you up and I say, Eric, I got to find a pair of plates for a 69 Mustang. How do you begin going about the process? How do you start to look and actually find them for them?
Well, usually what I do is on a popular year like that is I actually have a waiting list. And because it's rare that I have those in stock, but usually I go down to Southern Ontario. I'm from Eastern Ontario myself. So what I do is I take a few trips during the year down to Southern Ontario, and I basically pick all over the province through flea markets, antique shops, and I'm phoning in plate combinations to see if they'll clear, if they're clearing the system. And basically, I'll haul them all back in one shot, and then I'll slowly start working on them through the year. So I'm filling orders as I go, basically.
But you're not. Do you make plates ever? Can you make? So if you have one, can you make a matching one, or do you have to find them both?
No, and that's the other thing is that they won't allow reproduced plates under it. So you do have to find an old pair in original condition. And the only thing that you can do is restore them if if they're too far gone. But they do have to be original that basically were issued by the ministry way back when.
So how far have you gone, or how far would you go to actually find a pair of plates?
I've gone pretty far. Basically, all the way down to your neck of the woods. I've been down to as far as probably 1 year. I went all the way down to London. So, and it helps too. I have family that lives in Northern Ontario, so I'll sometimes look up there if I'm up there visiting. But generally speaking, I'd say the GTA, just because that's where vintage plates were basically doled out by the hundreds back then. Seeing that's where all the cars were back in those days. Because I go as far back as the late teens.
Wow.
Yeah.
And based on your history, is everything out there if you look hard enough? Can you really, if you really want to dig, can you find a plate for every year?
Oh, definitely. And I would say right now on my website, I'd probably have 95% of the years in stock, probably post 1920. So a lot of it is nice that I'll have finished stock ready where a customer can, point and click and get in touch with me, and we'll make the sale right on the spot. It's only the tougher years, like I said, the 1969, or for instance, another popular one is 1957. Everybody wants a pair for their 57 Chev.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And do people know, when you walk in, do most people know that these plates actually have value? Or do you tell them, hey, here's what I'm going to do with it? Because I would think that would just say, oh, fine, then the price has just gone up by 7 times.
Yeah, you know what? It's there's hardly no awareness of the program. Sometimes, so 9 times out of 10, I'd say people don't know about it and what possibly they're worth. And the caveat there too is that 95% of the plates out there don't work, unfortunately, because the numbers aren't available. So I'm really looking for a needle in a haystack most of the time. But you will get the odd seller that'll say, hey, I was on this guy's website in Ottawa that has pairs posted, and he's asking X amount. What do you think I should sell them to you for? So you do get that as well.
This is totally off topic, but I do have to ask. It just popped into my head. Once upon a time, were license plates actually made by prisoners in jail, like we always heard they were, stamped by the guys who were in for whatever?
Well, actually, Ontario is one of the few jurisdictions that still has their license plates made in a correctional facility.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's true. Okay.
Yeah, and actually we started doing that all the way back in 1931. So it's been a long-standing tradition here in the province that plates are made by correctional facilities. So
That's funny because I always just thought that was the cliche or something that we just throw, but I didn't actually think it was true. But all right, there you go.
yeah, no, it's very common. South of the border, you'll see probably half the states are doing that as well.
So once you find a pair of plates, you now take them back to your place, to your shop, whatever it is. What do you do? How do you know? Let's say you've got a 1947 Ontario license plate. How do you know what it's supposed to look like?
Well, this is where it ties into, I guess, my kind of side hobby or passion. I've been collecting license plates for almost 25 years. It just started on a whim one day that, hey, how about we collect one plate from each jurisdiction or state or province, and essentially, I started collecting Ontario plates, and over the years I've amassed a collection of every year in almost pristine condition. So what I do is I basically color match the paint with an existing plate hanging on my wall that is a pristine example of what it would look like.
There is a picture that I saw of you online with the story, and you're standing in front of this wall of plates. And I'll tell you something else I had no idea about. You mentioned that the off years were the dark blue versus the white blue for a while. But there's green Ontario plates, there's red Ontario plates, there's yellow Ontario plates, there's brown Ontario plates, there's every mix and match of the colors. I know you have the farm vehicle one, which is different, but most of them, I had no idea there were that many over the years.
Yeah, there's a lot of funky colors out there that happened particularly in the 60s and 70s. So back then, transport trucks and commercial vehicles, they got what was called a quarterly plate. So if you can believe it, in our disposable society, every quarter you would get a new plate if you wanted to pay quarterly, if you were a business. So you can imagine the wastage back then. But
which explains why they're all hanging in bars now.
Exactly. So, I mean, those are a dime a dozen, and they did have a whole bunch of funky colors for those commercial plates, but none of those are really applicable under the year of manufacture program because they weren't intended for regular car plates back then.
And Eric, some of the plates, which I was surprised, are not even metal.
Basically, before they were prison made in 1931. Ontario basically went out and put out a request for proposal out to the industry in Ontario, and basically said, here's what you need to bid on. What can you produce? So, for instance, the second license plate ever that was produced in the province of Ontario was made by a company called Gutta Percha Tire Company. They made tires, and they decided to bid that year, and they made the license plates. So they actually stood up well in retrospect. And that's from 1905, if you can believe it.
And what were they made out of?
They were made out of rubber.
Rubber license plates?
Rubber license plates, yep.
You can't possibly, though, if someone comes to you with a 1905 request, you can't find any of those around, can you?
No, pretty well when you get back, I'd say, past 1917. There's not a lot of cars on the road from that era any longer, and B, the collectible value on those is just so high that, I wouldn't even remotely try to stock a pair in that era just because it's cost prohibitive, and really a guy with a classic car isn't going to want to pay that type of price either.
Well, and I got to believe that probably those that were out there, the owners looked at these at one point and said, who got the idiot kid's toy rubber license plates, and just threw them out because they never thought that they actually were anything?
Oh, I know. I'm sure there's horror stories similar to, the hockey cards or baseball cards where they were just tossed out. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, okay, we just got a couple of minutes here. You do this, is this your business or is this a side business? Like, is there enough business here to make a business out of this?
It's a side business. It basically self-funds my hobby, and it's basically a labor, of love. And, that being said, it creates enough where, I register everything, formally with CRA and whatnot on a yearly basis, but it's not big enough where I'm, having to collect, let's say HST on every sale or anything like that. But, I do have a classic car myself, and, it helps maintain the bills on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so if I go on your website, typically in a range, what does a license plate cost? I want to buy one. What am I going to pay between what and what?
Yeah, on average, I'd say ballpark range you're in about $120 for a.
That's not bad.
For a refinish pair, which is, when you think about it, guys are spending, 10, 15, 20, easily 40,000 on some of these classic cars. When you think, finishing touch, from me anyway, the purchase price is $120. There is a bit of a fee from the ministry. They charge about $250 to register the plate. So you're out the door probably around the $400 range, $400 to $500 range, depending on total price.
Does anybody just buy them not for an old car, but does anybody just say, "Hey, that's a really cool license plate. I want one for my wall," and say, "Can I get one?"
Yeah, and I'll usually, I'm an honest seller. I don't like railroading people with a high purchase price. So, if they come to me and say, "Look, my Uncle Bill is having a birthday party, and he was born in '65, or I just want a wall hanger for 1970," I'll say, "You know what? I have some that are not YOM valid. I'll sell, $20 for the pair type of thing, So definitely,
that. Eric, that is actually a great gift idea. Now that
really
you say
is.
it really is. I never even thought of that, but that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I mean it's a novelty. A year of birth. It gets people talking.
Do you have any? Do people when they order one of these though for their classic car and it's the final piece that they have to put on there? Do people ever send you pictures back with them with their car? Do you have a collection of what your work has done in the classic car world to top everything off?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really I try and build a nice relationship with my customers, seeing it is a niche market. And it's true. I tell them, send me a picture of your car when it's all done and plated. And sure enough, on my website, I have one of my pages. It's called the showroom, and I have many pictures on there of customers' cars with their plates on it. So that's the rewarding part of it, is you get to put a piece of metal on somebody's car that's 50, 60, 80 years old, and it lives on, which is really neat.
Very, very cool story. Eric Vetterati, again, you can find his website. It's capital Y, capital O, capital M, which is year of make, right? Year of make?
Yeah, year of make.
Year of make plates. Yeah, year of make plates, lowercase plates. At YOM, all capitals, then plates, lowercase, but no break, one word, .ca, and you can see all the stuff on there. You can see the license plates. You can see what's out there. Eric, listen, I think it's fascinating. I think it's a really... as I say, I had no idea this thing would even exist. It never dawned on me that you could find plates to go with your classic cars or anything like that. Really cool idea. I encourage people to go take a look at your site. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you very much for having me on tonight.
It is, again, go look at it. It's YOMplates.ca. And, he just said that, and I wasn't having him on here as a sales pitch because, I don't know how many people who are listening drive a classic car they've rebuilt or something like that. I don't know how many people would actually buy it. But the idea to find a plate or a pair of plates for someone who's in their birth year, that's actually kind of a neat idea. If you're looking for something really unique to give someone, it's not the worst idea in the world, quite frankly. Now I know what I'm going to get Luke for his next birthday. Oh, actually, wait. I don't give Luke birthday presents. And besides, they look exactly like the plates that we have right now. Luke is so young that the plates look exactly like they do right now. But
the numbering and lettering is a little different.
Well, maybe.
No, not maybe.
Is it a little different?
I predate the 4 letters, 3 numbers system.
I'll have to check your birth certificate to make sure.
You're listening to The Scott Radley Show, weeknights from 7 to 9 on AM900 CHML.